Oh no. Cough. I have contracted the disease. I am terribly sick. So now, all I need to feel better is the cure.
And the Oscar goes to
Marshall Queenston.
So remember that one thing I did with David Bowie, where I listened to all of his albums for the first time, then ranked all of them based on my humble opinion after one listen? So I had so much fun out of that I'm transforming that one-off in a series of the channel. Pretty cool, huh? And what is the artist that I chose to cover in the second episode of a Newbie Ranks? As you can see, I'm really creative with names. Anyway, the artist I'm covering today is The Cure. Rob Smith and company were responsible for some of the most acclaimed albums of the 80s, with one of the most consistently great discographies not only in rock, but in music in general. So with all of that in mind, of course this means that I love their discography, right? Right? Please don't tell me. It's the second episode of the series, and it feels like it's way too soon for me to make these realizations. But this dive made me notice that not every artist that I listen for this series I'm gonna end up becoming a fan. And The Cure was the first one. When I posted this list in Rate Your Music, I tend to name them Learning to Love Blank. After this episode, I will probably have to think of a different name for those, because I definitely didn't learn to love The Cure. Do I think they are untalented? No, of course not. But I do think their music is not exactly something that clicks with me. At least not for now. And because of that, the resulting ranking here is really bizarre. I mean, really bizarre. If you are the Cure fan already, keep in mind that my album ranking of this video is probably going to make you feel like this.
Hey buddy, look over here! Haha, now you're blind!
Because even I can tell that it's completely out of the ordinary. So, I guess it's time to start, correct? Well, you've been warned. Alright, so to begin the list, we actually have kind of a normal pick. It's their self-titled 2004 album, which if it were for me, it would be called The Disease, because it's the opposite of everything that makes The Cure so interesting. The albums that are coming later in this lower portion of this list are records that to me are just middling. But the self-titled is the only album in here that I can truly say it sucks. The album opens with the song Lost, which after it ended, my reaction was pretty succinct. Oh no. A thing that I definitely recognize The Cure does well is when it comes to opening tracks. Nearly all the albums in here have great openers. I could say all of them, but this one exists, breaking my theory. Lost is one of the messiest songs the band has ever released. The guitar sounds cheap and out of sync, the chorus is garbage, and it shows for the first time one of the most notable flaws of this album. Rob Smith screaming high notes like he just slammed his junk in the car door. This was the point that got me worried about this record, and to my distaste, the rest of the album wasn't much better. Production that feels just as crappy and lazy as the album cover, to the point that I believe both were done by the same child. Weak songwriting and tiring compositions. The second half gets better, but at that point it's too little too late. I guess the only songs that I'd say are passable are Out and Never, but even those are far away from being among my favorite The Cure songs. So if you want to listen to this record, all I say to you is, don't. Now, this is the point that it gets controversial. 17 Seconds is a generally very beloved The Cure record, and I thought I was going to like it as well, considering the album's first song after the intro, Play For Today, that I thought was a pretty good song, but everything after that just left me completely apathetic. All the songs offer that cold, very atmospheric vibe that initially managed to get my attention, but after 2 or 3 songs, I was completely uninvested on this. And by the end of the record, I was left like, well, that happened, by one of the most middling albums of their discography. People love the shit of this record, but I myself find it to be very bland. Even though it's not the worst thing in the world. It's either just not for me, or it hasn't clicked yet. Who knows? Ironically, The Top is largely regarded as one of the bottom albums of The Cure's discography. And yeah, I concur with that opinion. It's just not an interesting album. The production varies from overblown to monotonous, the compositions are weak, and to me, it feels more like an album made by a The Cure cover band than actual The Cure. The base of the band is there, And they can play too, it's just completely lacking of anything to make it interesting. It feels soulless. So basically, an album that is pretty much just for the core The Cure fans, and nobody else. And even in that case, it's not certain that you're gonna like it. Considering how people treat this album, I was expecting it to be way worse. Yes, it's a really malformed album, but it has a few shining moments. Like the fact it ends. Jokes aside, this album is not that bad. It's completely unhinged, and it has a severe lack of focus, with the album not being sure of what it wants to be. The songs don't connect in the slightest, and it feels more like you're listening to a Spotify radio of the Cure album more than an actual album. But this album has Want. And Want is one of my favorite songs in their entire catalog. No, seriously, Want is legit one of the best songs I've heard in this video. The riffs are captivating, it has a great progression, Robert does a nice performance, and it makes me feel like if the album went more in that direction, or in the few songs in here that I liked, it would be higher in this list. But I guess that's the way it is.
Everything's coming to a grinding halt.
When I'm scrolling around richer music, I often see people saying, "Oh, Three Imaginary Boys should be voted, it's one of the Cure's best, yada yada yada." After listening to it, at least upon first listen, I don't really feel it. And it's mostly because the production feels weak. I didn't feel the same excitement as listening to other The Cure albums than in this one, probably because it was a completely different point in their careers to begin with. But at least, I did enjoy it to some extent. There are a couple songs that I would return occasionally, especially my favorite track, Object. The Cure in general is a band that I didn't really become a fan after the experience, but there are some albums that I really liked. This one, I just mildly appreciate. I should better start writing my testament after this. I'm going to refer to this album as Videofornication just to be safe of Susan. Videofornication, often considered to be one of The Cure's best works. And not only that, but also one of the best albums ever made. I don't get it. To me, it's in that same zone of the Three Imaginary Boys, where it has some shining moments, but the complete experience feels lukewarm to me. But this one goes for different reasons. Here, I think the riffs are way more engaging in almost every track, but all the songs are very repetitive. Generally, I don't mind repetitive songs. One of my favorite songs of last year, First Responders by Dinner Party, is repetitive as all heck, and I love it. But the matter is how long a song can go without overstaying their welcome. And almost all of the songs in here begin with me totally into it, and by the end, I just lose all my interest. Only like The Figurehead that I didn't feel that way. If the songs were shorter, sure, maybe I could get behind, or maybe even like the album. But as it is, it's a turn off to me. And the songs aren't even that long to begin with. It's probably just me having another unhealthy dose of bad The Cure takes. Nice. It's an album that has similar flaws to Videofornication, but they happen here in a different way that they happen in the other album. You know what I mean? While Videofornication's problem is that the songs felt like they were way too long, here, the actual track list is too long. It's a double album, but it feels like it shouldn't be. This album feels like a mixed bag to me, but if we cut like half of the track list, we'd have one of The Cure's greatest works. If the album was like The Kiss, Catch, Torture, How Beautiful You Are, Why Can't I Be You, Just Like Heaven, All I Want, Hot Hot Hot, Like Cockatoos, Icing Sugar, Shiver and Shake, and Fight, it would still be album length, and it could be way up in this list, at least in the top 3. The oldest The Cure album that I actually like. Also, from this point on, all the albums in here receive a big thumbs up. Fate to me is more an album that is leading to a great record than it is a great record in itself. Which some might be true, but to me, I just told you what I think of Videofornication. But it's still really good, albeit very depressing. This is one of the band's most somber albums, with existential lyrics, haunting vocals, and dark melodies that, while they were present in 17 Seconds and Videofornication, here they sound way more well developed. Especially my pick for favorite track, Primary. It's an album that really matches with its album cover. It's grey, it's down, it's ominous, mysterious, and it's one of The Cure's most Wait, is that Among Us? One of the band's poppiest works, and maybe that's why it connected more with me. While it's still kind of a bittersweet record, I think there are more elements to it that make it a more engaging record to my ears. like the stronger presence of love songs, more polished sounds in comparison to the band's previous albums. But what really seals the deal to me here is one track in specific. This song is A Night Like This. A Night Like This is not just my favorite track of the record, but it's my favorite The Cure song. Period. It's one of the few songs in this entire journey that the moment I first heard it, I was like, that's the one. We've hit jackpot. I just don't burst any fireworks now because I don't want to scare any doggies. They don't deserve that. The band's best guitar riff, incredibly catchy melody, and a sax solo for the ages. This is, to me, everything I wanted from The Cure, and it's a perfect song all throughout. The rest of the album? Oh, it's cool too, I guess. Yeah, I think right now you are understanding why I think The Cure fans probably want me burned at the stake. But screw it. I think this album is great, and it's one of the most underrated pieces. It's sort of a merging of the reasons why I like Bloodflowers, who hasn't shown yet, so hold on, and the nuisance that is Rob Smith's vocals, that are horrendous like the ones from their self-titled. Here at least it's less of an issue, because the music is generally better. Even if it's not an album that I'm crazy about, neither I have a true desire to return to it. But if I do decide to do so, I'm pretty sure that I will have a nice enjoyable time. Especially my favorite track, This Here and Now With You. At least I hope so. Disintegration is the king of The Cure's discography, technically speaking of course. So considering how things are going in this list, it's surprising that it isn't like number 9 or something. Disintegration to me feels like a blend of the colder, more existential material they released throughout the early 80s, with the more refined and popular material of albums such as Head on the Door and Kiss Me Kiss Me Kiss Me, especially Head on the Door. And it's a marriage that matches the best of both worlds in here. Songs that have a very strange, otherworldly beauty to them. Melodies that are cold, but at the same time are very lush and mesmerizing. It's not always that it connects with me. Neither is among my favorite albums ever, but it's one album that I really can get the appeal, and I'm looking forward for future listens. Fascination Street is my favorite song in here, but I will say that this album has no bad songs. It's just some moments that were less impactful. Coincidentally, I'm now talking about the album that came right after Disintegration, Wish, which is an album that has a theoretically similar concept to Disintegration, of blending sounds of the past, but executed in a very different way. Disintegration had a clear focus in the earlier existential loneliness made me emo sounds. In this one, the focus is more in the mid-80s, yeah boy, let's groove but not too much stuff, especially Kiss Me Kiss Me Kiss Me. The sound palettes are more vivid, and while it's not as ethereal as Disintegration was, the blend ins with elements of jangle pop and stylings that remind me of R.E.M. resulted in one of the few albums by the band that I truly enjoyed. My personal favorite song here is From the Edge of the Deep Green Sea, but it's not the only song that I really liked here. Open, Trust, Letter to Elise, To Wish Impossible Things, and of course, Friday I'm in Love. These are all some of my favorite The Cure songs, and I guess that alone is a victory to me. But there's still one album left. Shall we move to it? I'm not sure what's going to be the reaction of the public at large for Bloodflowers being my favorite The Cure album. I thought people could either go mad or just scratch their heads, or just don't care, which is the most logical scenario. But some friends of mine actually said this was a, in their words, based pick. So, well, I guess it's all good for me. Anyway, a thing that I should have probably mentioned earlier in this video is that for some reason, I really struggle to connect with the albums from the 80s. Not just from The Cure, but from any bands, even if they peaked in that decade. The only exception is what? Judas Priest? Regardless, the 80s to me was a decade that was much more driven by singles than albums. And I partially believe that the main problem with it is that the production of the albums of that decade often feel a bit weary, especially the really long ones. And The Cure probably fit in that mold to me. So to take that sound that I always thought had potential to be truly phenomenal of albums such as Disintegration and Head on the Door, but merge them with a more quote-unquote modern production, and the result to me is an album that is not phenomenal. But hey, it's my favorite album by theirs anyway. Yeah, even my favorite album in here isn't one that blew my mind. But hey, this time around it was really close. Some songs certainly did, like Out of This World, and especially Watching Me Fall. This is to me the closest to a fantastic album The Cure has ever got. And while it's still not there yet, it's close enough for me to call it a success. And yes, for sure I look forward to releasing to this album and see how my opinion changes for it. Hopefully it changes for the better, but let's see what the future holds for me. Here are my favorite songs by them. I'm not making a list of underrated ones, because I don't think there are enough songs that really got me to make a top 10 of it. To wrap it up, I'm not exactly proud of my opinions here. I really wanted to blend in and find greatness in the records that everyone think are great too. But hey, it was just my first listen to them. Maybe the more I listen to these records, the more they grow on me. Anything can happen. I want to see what me in 1 or 2 years will think of the same list I just made. Will a lot have changed or not? Who knows? Anyway, thanks for watching, and feel free to send suggestions of more artists for me to cover in this series. And consider subscribing to support this channel. That's it for today, so see you next time.